All right. I think we are good to begin. So, as you can see here, my first slide has two pictures. The one on my left-hand side is a picture of kids without shirts playing on a beach, possibly. And this picture was actually shared by Mr. Mahindra, who is the head of the Mahindra companies, and it actually went viral a couple of years ago. The reason why I have put up this picture today here, along with another picture where you can see that there's a little girl who has got a very expensive, beautiful red toy car, and she's actually crying because she wanted a blue car. If you observe the picture with these boys playing carom, it's interesting to see that they have kind of created those holes in the sand where the pawns can go and fall in. They're using plastic bottle caps which were thrown on the beach as the carom pawns because they could not afford to buy a carom board. But as you can see, in spite of all these issues, these boys somehow look extremely happy, right? So in my presentation today, apart from talking about how we can manage children during Corona, I have in fact put up a lot of slides, or probably the first half of my presentation will talk about the various kinds of behavior problems we see in children, how at home we can deal with these simple behavior problems. I will not take you through a lot of medical terminologies and all the complicated cases that I see in my clinic or in our hospital, but I probably will take you through how at home, using simple methods and being conscious about our ways of parenting, we can actually behaviorally help our kids become better. And as you can see in this first slide, rather than having temper tantrums, rather than looking at the negative aspects of life, help our kids be happy, because that is what childhood is all about: being happy, enjoying. And as parents, it's also our responsibility not only to take care of children and keeping them happy, but also enjoying their childhood and in the process being happy ourselves. So this is like an overview of my presentation today. So that is what I will be probably covering, but a little more in detail into nuances and particulars about child's mental health, developmental perspective, and behavior problems of children itself. So even though the topic for which all of you registered was managing children during pandemic, but as I said, I will take you through a lot more things along with telling you about the pandemic and what actually is going on in the child mental health perspective, and what kind of difficulties families and children are facing during the pandemic itself. So I am Dr. Soumyashree Mayur Kaku. I am a child psychiatrist by training. I did my integrated MD PhD program in clinical neurosciences and specialized in child psychiatry from NIMHANS Bangalore, and have been working with children from the past few years in Bangalore. Have you all seen this movie Up? I'm sure all of you have little kids or older kids, and that is why you have logged into this talk today. Have you all seen this movie Up, where this old man would have promised his wife to take her to Paradise Falls? So they will be living in the US, and they will have a dream of going to the Paradise Falls, which will be in Mexico. So yeah, I can see in the chat box, so many of you are actually saying you've seen this movie. I will come back to this. Keep this in mind. I have another slide later on from this particular movie, and how simple movies with children watch, though we name it as animation movies or cartoon movies, actually have such a big, great message, not only for the kids, but also as parents and grandparents, in fact, for us as well. Okay, here's a trick question. Do you know what place this is? quickly, I want all of you to type in the chat box. What place is this? This is in India. Clue number 1. It is related to science. It's a place which is related to science. Any idea? Anyone quickly want to tell me which place this is? Okay, planetarium. Very close, very close. No, it is not a planetarium. Probably it is a planetarium, something like a planetarium. It is not in India. Lotus Temple Museum? No, no, no. Hyderabad? No. Nehru Planetarium, Birla Planetarium? No. All right, clue number 2. What place is this? It belongs to the same place. Yes, yes, yes. ISRO Center, Space Center. Yes, absolutely. Observatory. Very, very nice. Awesome. Yes, it is the Sriharikota Center. It's not ISRO in Bangalore. It is the Indian Space Research Organization's Sriharikota Center, from where the rockets are launched. Yes, lot of you. Good. Very nice. Is it in Pondicherry? No, it is in, I think, Telangana. Now, I guess it's in Sriharikota. And come on, next trick question. What's this? Satish Dhawan Science Space Center. Perfect. Next question. What is this? What is this picture? Yes, Veena. What kind of Veena? Anybody of you know the types of Veena? Sitar. No, not sitar. It's Veena. What kind of Veena? No, it's not a Tanpura. It's a Veena. Saraswati Veena. Close enough. Yes. Okay. Now, the next question is, can you link a person who is, yes, Rudraveena. Yes. Can you link a person who is related to the Veena, Rudraveena, and the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota? My next trick question. I mean, I'm sure you're all wondering why isn't she talking about child mental health? Why is she conducting an online quiz? But this is like the basis for my talk and why I have put this up. APJ, perfect, perfect, awesome. Lot of you are getting the right answer. It is Abdul Kalam. Yes, he was the president of India from 2002 to 2007. And he also was a really amazing Veena player. And in fact, I think if I remember it right, when he gave a speech in the UN, or probably when he took I'm not sure it's which of these ones it is, but I think maybe when he gave a speech at the UN, or probably when he took an oath as the president of India, he in fact, as soon as he went up to the stage, sang one of the famous Tyagaraja's Pancharatna Kirtanas called as Yandaro Mahanubhavulu, meaning there are so many great people in this world, and Andariki Vandanamulu. I salute and bow down to all those amazing great people in this world. And that is how he kind of started his talk. I'm not really sure on which of these occasions he in fact quoted this beautiful, amazing song from Tyagaraja's Rachana. But what made him stand out from the rest of the people, from so many of our billions of people who are living in our country, is 1, his simple lifestyle, 2, he rose with the sun, 3, his love for books, 4, his Veena, and 5, most importantly, he did not have a television in his house even on the day he died, or till the day he died, till his last breath. He lived a simple lifestyle, he rose with the sun, he read lots of books, he played his Veena, but never, not even a single time, even when he was the president, had television in his house. Now, actually coming to the child mental health perspective and talking about why child mental health is significant. As we all know, it's really very important for us to understand the social and emotional development of children, because this is kind of a platform on which children grow up and become adults. And as we all know, many of you have heard this from your doctors as well as from maybe your parents or grandparents, and they keep telling you that whatever your child learns in the first 5 years, it is like a foundation. Their personality has settled in the first 5 years, and this is like the stepping stone for the rest of their life. The values they learn, the habits they have, all of these things kind of set in by the time they're 5 years of age. And this, in fact, is affected by two things. One, the genes, which we cannot change. None of us can do anything about the genes, but definitely we can do something about the environment and how the environment influences its interaction with the genes, and how it can change how a child grows up and how the child behaves when the child is older, right? So it can affect both the physical health as well as behavior. Yes, absolutely. Somebody has written here, nature and nurture. That is exactly what I'm saying. So how an interplay of nature and nurture can help our children mold into amazing human beings for the future. So for you to just understand, genes are already present when your child is conceived. And right from the time of conception, even when the child is in the womb, there can be lot of environmental influences on the child. Like you all might have heard your parents or family members saying, listen to good music, talk good things, eat good food, eat healthy food, get your checkups regularly, because a lot of things also can influence how the child is born in the prenatal period itself. Yet again, when the child goes through early childhood and puberty, there can be a lot of social stress, environmental influences, positive and negative influences, and all of these can result in various childhood, adolescent, and later adulthood mental health difficulties, behavior problems. Not all symptoms are amounted to giving a diagnosis of a child having a mental health or a psychiatric disorder. Many of these can just be features of a particular difficulty, which basically I would like to call it as child mental health issues. So yet again, it is estimated in the United States that 20% of children with mental health disorders get the treatment they need. And we can imagine the number of children who go without treatment. And the situation is absolutely something very similar even in India. So we are a developing country, so our population of children and adolescents are far more huge and enormous than any of the Western countries. And we kind of do not pick up child and adolescent mental health issues early on. And many of these, even if picked up, hardly a few of them receive treatment they actually need. And yes, of course, there are many barriers for this issue: lack of prevention and early intervention strategies. Stigma. This is another very important thing which I probably will keep stressing on and off. Stigma of taking your child to a psychologist, to a psychiatrist, or to a psychiatric social worker, or to anybody related to the mental health profession. Taking your child to seek help itself is a big stigma in our country. Again, lack of specialty treatment services, shortage of mental health professionals who particularly help children and treat children, fragmentation of existing services, confusion about how to access, local and regional variation in care. All of these things have a big impact on treatment, barriers to treatment, and how parents access care. But yet again, if you do not recognize child mental health issues early, it can lead to a lot of child mental health disorders, increased risk of suicide. I don't think I have to particularly mention any names of people who have committed suicide recently, because we've all been reading on and off in the past few months. There have been many famous people who have taken their lives. Juvenile justice involvement, substance abuse, and other negative and costly outcomes. Again, the positive part of this is child's mental health disorder can be treated effectively, and the goals for children focus on their resilience and recovery. Let's give you a simple example. So let us say that you have a 1-year-old and you kind of are tired, and the 1-year-old starts crying or drops something on the floor, and you yell, "Oh, come on, yes, sati bidastiya, gota galva," or something like that. You know, you yell at the child. the child starts crying, and he cries or she cries, let's say for about 30 seconds. After that, you hug the child, and immediately after that, as if it's like a switch, the child starts smiling and the child is absolutely fine. But at the same time, let us say you have like a small argument with your spouse. Do you think you can kind of switch the button off and say, it's fine, we'll settle it out, and I'm absolutely okay, and start smiling immediately? No, because we have all grown up and become adults, and our ability for resilience and recovery is in fact much poorer than what children have, right? You know that children, even though they have fever, they kind of go to play. Even if they have cold and cough, they are happy to run around. So they are much more resilient and they recover really very fast when we give them appropriate support. And this in fact also is applicable to child mental health issues when we recognize and support them adequately. So this is like a picture of all the various kinds of influences the child has. So family, of course, is the central influence, and other two parallelly equally important to family are school and peers. So they have friends who will influence them. School, where they spend at least 6 to 8 hours in a day, is a major influence on their growth and development. And of course, all the other, as you can see mentioned here on the slides, the various other factors in the environment of the child can also influence how the child is growing up. So we all know what all influences the child, but today we are here to discuss what can go wrong. Anything can go wrong during any time, right? From the prenatal period, like I said, even before the child is born, things can go wrong. And starting from infancy, as soon as the child is born, till the child finishes college and transits into adulthood, at every stage there are many things which can go wrong. Not that it goes wrong for every single child, but if we know what these are, we can kind of pick up if our child is going through something like this. Okay, so before going to 0 to 1 year, I would really want to mention what happens in the prenatal period. I have been involved in some work related to how pregnancy and various environmental factors during pregnancy can influence outcome of a child when the child is born, like families having moms who are under stress, who are under medication for other medical issues, hypothyroidism, gestational diabetes, pregnancy-induced hypertension. Not that all of these disorders, in fact, lead to problems in children, but whenever there's a risk factor, it's always good to be cautious, take help of your doctors, not to take it really very casually, and keep yourself healthy, right? So, of course, being a child mental health person, prenatal period, I really don't have much to do. But when the child is 0 to 1 years of age, that is when onwards I come into the picture. So from 0 to 1 year, basically a few things can start going wrong. For example, if your child is born prematurely, your child was born before due date, far before due date, or your child had a problem and the doctor decided that they have to do a cesarean section and bring the child out, or maybe during your delivery the child did not cry properly or breathe properly. So in the period of 0 to 1 year, whenever there's a risk situation during birth, it's always good to keep a close watch. I'm sure most of the pediatricians, neonatologists do this and will tell you what exactly will go wrong or what exactly you have to watch for. But you have to look for any delay in developmental disorders, developmental milestones, sorry. So if you have to look for any delay in developmental milestone, whether your child smiles at 3 months, whether your child is sitting, standing on time by the age of 1 year, is the child trying to walk, trying to speak monosyllables, trying to recognize family members from strangers, is there excessive crying, is there an abdominal issue, is the feeding okay, sleeping okay? So these are the kind of issues which you probably will have to discuss with your pediatrician. And most of the time, it really does not come up until a child mental health person has to intervene. Most of the time, 99% of the time, 0 to 1 year kids can be definitely managed by your pediatrician. So you don't have to panic or look for a mental health perspective. You can kind of get what questions, what answers you want from your pediatrician itself. Between 1 to 3 years, this is a crucial time because some of the developmental disorders start showing up between 1 to 3 years. For example, autism spectrum disorder, intellectual developmental disability, children who do not have very significant cerebral palsy symptoms in 0 to 1 year of age, it kind of starts getting more pronounced. If your child is having motor delay, if your child is having expressive speech delay, these are all the things which you probably will have to start considering between 1 to 3 years of age. Again, just to take a slight pause in my talk, if you have any questions, please do not type it in the chat box. Please type it in the question and answer section, because it will be easy for me to take questions after I finish my talk, because I can't see the question answer section when I'm looking at my chat section on the screen. So if you have any questions, please switch to the Q&A section and type in your questions there. All right, so like I said, you have to look for some of these developmental delays, developmental disorders, and sometimes we also have picked up ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, probably as early as 2.5 or 3 years of age, when the child is extremely hyperactive. Though we do not really diagnose ADHD before 3 years of age, but there have been some instances when parents bring the child for extreme hyperactivity. And then when we evaluate and look at the child, I have kind of been able to figure out other kind of problems going on. Like there can be children with sensory problems, sensory difficulties between 1 to 3 years of age. Because of the sensory issues, they can have significant hyperactivity, irritability, crying, and these kind of problems. Okay, and by the age of 3 years, we kind of can diagnose ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, expressive speech delay, global developmental delay. Most of these things can be definitely diagnosed by the age of 3 years. In between 3 to 6 years, this is the time when the child starts going to school. So yes, if there's a developmental delay, developmental disorder, which we did not pick up when the child was 1 to 3 years of age, probably can pick up when the child turns 3 years old. Sometimes there are children who have very mild symptoms where we don't really notice, or the child has not been referred by a pediatrician because the symptoms are really very subtle. But once the child starts going to school, probably the teacher will say, you know, your child is not socializing as equally as what the other children do. Or the teacher may say, your child is really very quiet and very, very shy. Or the teacher might say, you know, your child is too scared. All the time the child is sitting in one corner, very scared. Or the teacher might say, even though your child is 5 years old and is in LKG or UKG, your child is not able to pick up as well as what the other children are picking up in class, or they are not able to write as fast as other children, or your child is reading alphabets wrong, or your child is writing alphabets ulta, so like a mirror image. Numbers, the child is writing like a mirror image. So 7, the child writes the other way around. 3, the child writes other way around. So these are some of the issues which probably the teachers kind of pick up and bring to you. One other thing that I really want to mention here, and I've in fact had quite a few children whom I have seen in the last few years, where children can be anxious at this age, right? Even though we think that they cannot express anxiety, childhood anxiety is not so presentable by such an early age. I have had children who have had sleep disturbances because they saw something bad. You know, like there was a stress in the family, somebody passed away, you know, a favorite grandparent passed away, or the child was beaten by the teacher, or somebody else got beaten in the class and the child is very sensitive and got hurt, or, you know, is really scared to go to school. So some of these stress related problems very early on can also be there. Though at this age, it's really very easy to treat this. It requires appropriate attention if at all you see any symptoms. In fact, I once had a child who came from Lucknow, where, in Lucknow they had these floods, and on the TV they were constantly showing that, buildings are collapsing, trees are falling down, and they had a power cut for about 48 hours, and they had continuous thunder and lightning, and because of which the child kind of went into a panic disorder state, where every 2 or 3 hours, or every time, he hears a thunder or he has a lightning sound, he sees a lightning, he kind of goes into breathing and irritability issues, palpitations, constant crying, and the parents really couldn't figure out what's going on, until they, actually realized that he was really scared that, his house is going to collapse, and probably all of the family members are going to die. So he was really scared that all of them are going to die, because that was what was being shown in the TV constantly on the news. So these are some of the things which we have to keep in mind between 3 to 6 years of age. Above 6 years of age, again, predominantly school-related problems. Some children who have very mild attention deficit or hyperactivity issues can be having difficulty once they start going to primary school, where the teacher will say, your child's notes are incomplete, he's not able to cope up with whatever is being written on the board, which is when you kind of have to start thinking about, is my child able to concentrate well? Is the attention span okay, or is the child frequently getting distracted? Sometimes you also might have observed, like when you make the child sit down and start writing at home, when the child is doing homework, they frequently take breaks. I want to go to bathroom, I'm hungry, or mommy, give me some water to drink, or akka is disturbing me, you ask akka to keep quiet. They kind of come up with all these various kinds of excuses to take a break. So it's not as if they're not interested in studying, but it's just that their brain is not ready and is not able to sit beyond 6 minutes, not able to sit beyond 12 minutes. So depending upon the capacity, the child is having difficulty sitting down for a long time. At around 10 years of age, of course, the child, there are a lot of body changes which are happening. Hormonal changes start coming in. Children are more angry. They kind of start having issues with the style, your parenting style. They have fights with friends. They start complaining. By the time they're in 5th standard, they kind of, I've had children who say, my friends all form a group, I am not a part of the group, they don't want me to be in that group, I want to go to another group, even they are not taking me. So they kind of start having more and more issues related to their peers, and a lot of other environmental influences from their friends, from media, as well as from the school. So above 10 years, most of the time, issues related to parenting are not really there. It's more related to the environment. But definitely above 12 years till 18 years of age, lot of issues, which is a mixture of parenting, mixture of environmental problems, teacher problem, friend problem. Again, they have kind of started hitting puberty, lot of hormonal changes, lot of mood swings, and all of these things start bringing in many behavioral challenges as well. Of course, I'm not going to talk about the major child psychiatric disorders like bipolar disorder or childhood psychosis, childhood depression, and all of these things in my today's talk, because I think the audience is a diverse group of parents, grandparents who have all age kids. So I probably won't be able to cover all of these things, because I would want to spend a little more time talking about how you can do behavioral intervention for simple problems at home. So managing behavioral issues, things to remember. So from this was like the introduction to what all can go wrong. And now I will move on to talking about some things which you can do at home. Is because of this. The first step in managing behavioral problems at home is to understand how much they can understand, right? So your child is 3 years old or 6 years old or 12 years old. the most important thing which as parents we have to understand is, can they understand how much they should understand for their age, or are we speaking beyond what they can understand, right? So if you can see in this particular picture which I have put up in this slide, the outermost circle is tasks not yet learned by the child because of his abilities. The center circle is tasks at the limit of the learner's ability, that is the child's ability. And the inner circle is actually what the child can actually understand because of the child's inner emotions, right? So let us say that, this is something which I very frequently face in the clinic when I'm seeing my patients, that parents say, I keep telling my 5-year-old again and again, or a 4-year-old again and again, not to spill water or not to open the tap and leave it open. But how many ever times I scold, how many ever times I beat, my child is going to repeat the same thing again. But what you have to understand is, during child development, long-term memory in the child is not really completely formed until the child is about 5 or 6 years of age, about 6 years of age. So if you have punishment or yelling or shouting as a strategy for your child when the child is less than 6 years of age, I can probably tell you that it's kind of going to fail 98 to 100% of the times. Just because of the fact that your child is not able to retain in his or her brain that my mom scolded me, my dad told me not to do this particular thing or not to be stubborn, and your child is not going to remember that he or she was punished. It's not going to come again the next time your child faces a similar situation from the child's memory and remind the child, don't do this. Your parents had punished you, so you will face consequences. Please do not do what mistake you have already done earlier. All this kind of complex, abstract thinking develops in a child only when the child is about 7, 8 years of age. So in younger kids, most of the time, what is necessary for us to understand is look for how much they can understand and use appropriate words during parenting. When, if let's say your child is an adolescent, this happens many times when I conduct workshops for high school children. I ask them, what is your goal in life? And I've had 10 standard kids saying, I want to become successful and settle down well in life. That is why I should get good marks. And when I ask them, what is your understanding about being successful or settling down well in life? They don't have an answer. And most of them, in fact, tell me, no, ma'am, I don't know. These are things which my mom told me, or these are things which my grandparents tell me, or my dad tells me. When they were in 10th standard, they studied well, because of which they have become successful and they have settled down well in life. And I have to study well because I have to get into a good college. Why should I get into a good college? Because I have to become successful and settle down well in life. But if you actually think from a 15-year-old's perspective, do they really have an understanding of what life is? For them, life is all about happiness, going out with friends, having silly fights, having argument with parents, eating good food, enjoying, and a bit of studying and some bit of competitiveness and all that. They can't really understand these big words which parents use. So always, before giving any advice to your children, must think and understand how much they can understand. Second tip, be consistent and persistent. This is again another thing. Many times parents come and tell me, doctor, you told me that I have to, help my child become more courageous, let's say. Some child has anxiety, the child doesn't want to face his friends, or, he was bullied in school, he doesn't want to go back. But as parents, you have to actually identify what is the target behavior or skill that you want to change, or that target behavior you want the child to improve. And then you have a method in which you're going to intervene and follow training method consistently. So you have to, whether it's mom or dad. So this is again a tricky thing. Whenever a child, I had a child recently in the clinic, the child is extremely stubborn. The reason why the child is stubborn is because the moment the child has a temper tantrum, the mom kind of tells the child, no, there are rules in this house. You cannot have so many chocolates in a day. And the child has found an easy way out, because the child just goes to the dad and says, Daddy, see, mommy's telling no chocolate, please give me, give me. And the dad is like, oh, so sad, such a small kid. Why are you unnecessarily bugging this little girl? Come, let's give some more chocolates. So what is very important is that you have to be consistent with your method, one, but at the same time, mother and father are one single unit. So this is a must remember thing, that whenever you are parenting, mother and father should parent as one single unit. Always look at how you can design strategies to handle your child and your child's behavioral issues together, and look at how exactly you want to intervene using a single common strategy, again, which has to be consistent and probably linked with some kind of reward for performing the good behavior. And of course, you have to be persistent, not give up once the child starts having a tantrum again, or the child is very adamant. Giving up does not help. Teach them some values early on. For example, honesty, how to respect, compassion, acceptance of difficulties, acceptance of failure, sharing, imperfection. So some of these values have to be taught really early on. And I will tell you how also these can be done. But value-based system of education, of course, the school is following, but many times we also have to teach them these values. I'll give you a very, very simple example. I had a child a couple of years back. I very clearly remember this, and in fact, it has been a learning experience for me as well. I had this child who came to the clinic with some issue, and I don't remember what her problem was actually. But when I was doing an interview with her, she was a 12-year-old, and she in fact said, "Ma'am, I'll tell you one thing. One big problem is there, that my dad is very short-tempered. I am not an angry person, ma'am. My mom is also not an angry person, but my dad is very short-tempered." And then I said, "Okay, can you give me an example?" Then she said, "Ma'am, just when my dad was driving into the parking of the hospital, he yelled at the security because the security did not help him reverse the car." I mean, this is such a simple, very, very, very basic example I can give you, how we as parents can model values into our children. And in fact, as a 12-year-old, I was quite surprised that she is actually so mature and is able to understand the complexity of the situation, felt bad for the poor security in the parking. And in fact, these are the kind of value systems we have to teach them. I kind of have taken many workshops for preschoolers as well. And it's actually fun to take workshops for kids who are like 5, 7, or 9 years old, because they're really very innocent. They don't think, they speak their brain out. And in one of the workshops, I asked this child, I was kind of discussing the importance of waking up early in the morning and keeping consistent with the biological clock, and how it's important for us to have a routine during the day. And I was asking them, you all take bath before coming to school, and do you also take bath and wake up early on Sunday? And there was this little boy who was, I think, around 7 years old, and he said, "Ma'am, I'll tell you what happens. I actually wake up on Sunday also at 6 o'clock. But the moment I open my eyes and see there is no sound from the kitchen, there is no sound from the hall, and I look this side and that side, both my parents are asleep. So I think, okay, they might be tired. Let me also go back to sleep. I go back to sleep. Again, I wake up at 7 o'clock and I look this side and that side. Still, my parents are sleeping. Then I think, okay, I will also sleep. And then we all wake up only by 11 o'clock in the morning." So what I'm trying to tell here is, along with teaching values, some of these very minor things kids actually observe, they try to imitate, and they try to imbibe depending upon how we do it. We yell at the security, or we yell at the tarkari lady who comes on the road, or we argue with somebody for some silly thing in the shop or in the grocery store, or we don't smile much. All of these things kind of impact how children behave as well. So coming to that same point, modeling is a very, very important strategy when we are talking about behavioral issues. Again, I want to give you a simple example of a boy. He had, learning difficulties. His mom brought him to me for academic problems. And I kept thinking, we did a learning assessment, we did his IQ assessment, we went back and forth looking at if he had any developmental issues, but everything was absolutely fine. All his reports came normal. There was no problem with his learning, with his intelligence, with his social circle. They were very, very well to do. Mom was in fact working from home because she was like a designer for a company. So she had to design things from home, from her laptop. So she wasn't even actually going out to work. And dad was actually in a very good job. But the only catch here was that the dad would come probably at around 9:30 or 10 p.m. in the night. But then through multiple sessions, as and when I started understanding what is going on with this boy, after 2 or 3 sessions, once I really built rapport with him, it was quite interesting because he opened up and he had only one thing to say. Ma'am, I don't want to study because I feel like, who am I studying for? For myself. I don't want to study for myself because my parents want me to study because they want me to study to make them proud. They keep telling me, you study well, you become a big person, and we will be proud parents. But that is also not the problem, ma'am. I don't want to cooperate with them because they don't love me. I said, oh, come on. That is not true. You're the only child. There's no sibling. It's not possible that your parents don't love you. Of course they love you. They do so much for you. They have brought you to the doctor because, they feel like you need help. So that itself means your parents are concerned. They love you a lot. But, he had one really amazing thing to say. He said, my mom is there when I come back from school, but she's on her laptop. It's fine. She sits on the laptop because she is working and all that. But she works all the time. She's always on her laptop. And many times I also peek into her laptop, ma'am, but she's actually browsing through Facebook, right? So he has observed that. And he says, for my mom, Facebook, WhatsApp, all these things are important. And my dad, don't even ask about him, he said. He said, my dad comes at 9:30. The first thing he will do is switch on the TV. And he will say, I was very busy the whole day. I have to catch up with WhatsApp. So for my parents, I am actually not really very important. For them, screen time is more important. And because of this, I don't want to study. I am intelligent, but I don't want to study and I don't want to get good marks. That's what he said. And, I was quite shocked to see the kind of things kids think, the kind of things they come up with during sessions. But it was actually an eye-opener because this is something which I always give as an example when I talk about modeling and how parents have to really model and be role models for their children. Every body movement, every body language, every word we use, every time, the way we behave, the way we deal with situations, our kids are observing us because they actually want to imitate us and they actually want to, we are kind of the role models for them. We are the superstars. So I really think we should look at how we behave and really have to be superheroes for them. Again, in behavioral modification, there are 2 types of things whenever a child has any behavioral issue. Many times, the child has a behavior problem because the child needs attention. There's a temper tantrum because the child needs attention. The child is crying because the child needs attention. Younger kids cry, older kids are stubborn, adamant, have temper tantrums. Much older kids have anger issues. They argue, they fight. But only thing which you have to remember is there's a reason behind it. And most of the times it's because they are trying to seek help. They are trying to get your attention. So when we are helping our children, one of the things which is really important is you have to have lots and lots of praises, right? For example, this is a very simple example I give to families who come to me. The child is waiting outside for, let's say, 10 minutes, very patiently to meet the doctor, not running around, not crying, not having any demands. So after the doctor consultation, you in fact go back and just tell the child, you were such a sweet girl today. You sat so quietly and cooperated without any fuss, even if we had to wait for 10 minutes. That's it. Don't make a comment. Don't exaggerate the situation. Give them facts and praise them. This is called as positive reinforcement. You focus on the effort of the child and not exactly on the outcome, right? You appreciate the child's efforts. Don't bother, today you spent half an hour painting something. It's beautiful. I really appreciate that you spent so much of time painting this particular piece of art. And it's amazing how you can focus for such a long time. Don't bother if the art piece is bad, right? You appreciate the effort taken by the child. Be specific, avoid generic statements. For example, you were such a good boy today. What does that even mean? What was I a good boy for? Is it because I finished my food early? Is it because I didn't make a fuss that my mom cooked brinjal? Is it because I got my marks card and I have decent marks? So don't give generic statements. Be very, very specific for why you are giving a praise. Again, use simple sentences. Don't overpraise. Be genuine and sincere. You don't have to unnecessarily exaggerate. Give them facts. Be very, very genuine. Again, give age appropriate praises. Like I said, understand how much they can understand and give age appropriate praises. Avoid comparison. Oh, Aditi got so much, or Aditi did this. Aditi did so much of exercise, so you have to do. No, doesn't work. Or not like saying, he did for 1 hour, so you did for 1.5 hours. That is why you're very good. No comparison. The child has to be taught to become better by himself or herself and not in comparison with somebody else, not even the sibling. Again, catch your child doing good. And this can only be possible if you're alert about the child's behavior, exactly observing the child's body language, and catch the child perfectly on time when the child is doing something good. And try and avoid negative reinforcement, even though many times negative reinforcement also works. For example, if there is a bad smell, you can't tell your child, stand on your head, because again, next time if there's a bad smell, the child is not going to stand on his head as taking your punishment. No, it's not going to happen. But if there's a bad smell and you tell your child, oh, you're smelling bad, go just take a shower, and the bad smell is gone. Next time, if there's a bad smell, it increases the chance of the child taking shower again, right? So whenever you're giving negative reinforcement, it has to be oriented towards some kind of a goal. There has to be some output which will occur, which will influence future behavior as well, right? So it's always a balance of negative and positive reinforcement, both of which are essential. Better to have more positive reinforcement than negative. Again, when we are doing behavioral intervention, limit setting, right? They have to know what choices are there, what are the consequences if they choose which of these options, and don't threaten them by giving ultimatum. You don't do this by 5 o'clock, you're not going to get dinner. Or you don't do this, you don't behave well, I am going to take your screen time away. Not going to work. You give them options. You finish by 5, and then you can have dinner early, and then you can probably have screen time for 15 minutes. Give them options, give them consequences of their choices, and then set limits. You can't come back after 9 o'clock in the night because this. If you can't come, you give a call, you do this, you do this. If you're ready to do that, then you probably can come back after 9 p.m. So you kind of have choices with various consequences, and then you do limit setting based on the consequences. Okay, so after behavioral intervention strategies, I am moving a little bit into the types of parenting. So basically, there are 4 types of parenting: authoritative, neglectful, permissive, and authoritarian. So all of you parents actually look back, reflect upon yourself, and understand which kind of parenting you're doing right now, and I'll tell you which one is the best kind of parenting. So let's talk about authoritative parenting. So authoritative parenting is somebody who is very clear about the limits. They know when to stop their child. At the same time, they do a lot of appreciation, lot of positive reinforcement, and can balance their own emotions along with balancing the child's emotion. The second type of parenting, which is neglectful parenting, is when the parent is completely neglectful of the child. So whether the child has a bad company, whether the child is having any issues in school, is bullying other children, is getting punished over and over again, the parent just absolutely has no clue. The parent does not have any idea what's going on. So there's a lot of lying, lot of stealing, and lot of complex behavior problems. The third type of parenting is called permissive parenting. So in permissive parenting, what basically happens is that the parent is too loose. The child says at 12 o'clock in the night, I want to order ice cream right now. I feel like eating ice cream. And the parents like, oh, so sad. You've been at home the whole day. Let's order from Swiggy and have ice cream. So that is called as permissive parenting, where there are no limits, no barriers, no negative reinforcement. Absolutely everything is given to the child. And the fourth type of parenting is authoritarian parenting, where the father and mother are extremely authoritarian. They have very, very strict rules. There is no formation of trust between the parent and the child. The child, in fact, is scared about talking about his feelings or emotions with the parent. And this is a very complicated style of parenting. So, of course, you all might have understood by now that authoritative parenting is the best kind of parenting, where you have a balance of your rules, regulations, and limits, as well as have enough scope in the family for a lot of positive discussion. Coming to one of my most favorite topics, that is screen time. If you ask me, right, as a personal opinion, I will probably tell you no screen time for your child. If anybody asks me what's your opinion about screen time, I'll say no, sorry. No screen time for your child till your child is at least 7 years or 8 years old. Because the brain is developing, the brain needs to catch a lot of other information, so stop screen time. As you can see in this particular chart, kids younger than 18 to 24 months, screen time is not recommended. Kids 18 to 24 months old, screen time is not recommended. Kids 2 to 5 years old, screen time should be limited to less than 1 hour a day in high quality media programming. So what this means is that the child is watching an educational video or a cartoon which has a story, and the parent is actually discussing these issues with the child after they watch the video together. This is what it means, right? So it doesn't mean the child gets to watch whatever he or she wants to watch. Some safety tips include keeping bedroom away from TV, not having a television in the bedroom, having a lot of playtime. Meal time basically must be screen time free. No watching TV or phone when you're having your food. And enjoy these times to bond with children instead, right? This is very, very important, because right now the biggest issue is all the disorders which we are seeing newly, which are associated with excessive internet use, video gaming in older children, lot of TV time and phone time in younger children, lot of kids watching unnecessary horror movies, unnecessary adult level serials, trying to imitate what these serials show them about complex family relationships. I have had very young children, even as young as 6 months of age, who have been watching TV or looking at the mobile phone for more than 6 to 8 hours in a day, which has in fact influenced the child to have abnormal development of the brain. Lot of scientific material has already come and is still coming about how excessive screen time contributes to speech delay in children, attention difficulties, hyperactivity problems, issues with anxiety, issues with depression, issues with academics. A lot of kids are having academic difficulties. So a lot of such things are going on. And in fact, as you all know, recently government of Karnataka cancelled online classes for up till grade 5, because we don't really want so much of screen time for children constantly looking at the screen, right? Again, sometimes as parents, I know parenting is extremely complex. We all have to just take 3 deep breaths, rewind, and press play again, right? It's always as parents for us to figure out this goodness of fit model, where we have to see how a child fits with our style of parenting, whether the parenting and the child's behavior is balanced, along with various environmental influences and all the people who are a part of the child's life who can influence child behavior. Another very, very, very important thing which we kind of miss all the time, even in the mental health area, is that is the sibling silently affected? So there is one child who's very hyperactive, or there's one child who has more behavior problems than the other. Nobody talks about what's happening to the sibling. And this is something which I have really felt very deeply in my heart, because there are children who have developmental issues where the older sibling or the younger sibling is not really given so much of time by the parents, because they're all the time really exhausted and tired taking care of the child who has behavior problems or developmental issue, and the needs of this other sibling are not really met, right? So this is a really very important aspect, that you balance your parenting between the two children. If you have two kids or more than two kids, balance timing. And again, here I would really want to mention the perspective of quality time which you have to give your child. So quality time is basically time you take out in your day, at least 15 minutes in a day by each parent. 15 minutes by the father, 15 minutes by the mother separately, during which you will not give any advice to your child. You will not talk about any negative things about the child. You will not talk about any of your own family issues, family problems, or bring out any of your emotions. But you're spending that 15 minutes of quality time basically just making a nice, simple conversation with the child, right? Simple things like, today in my office, this is what happened. I had a call today, and on my call, this is what I discussed. And at the end of 15 minutes, after you've had all this random conversations with the child, you make one positive statement, which is, thank you for giving me this 15 minutes. And because of spending this 15 minutes with you, I felt really refreshed. I kind of got over my worries and I feel really refreshed. And this kind of empowers your child to develop a lot of bonding with you, as well as understand and modify the child's behavior in a much better way. A brief, I'm sure how children are affected by COVID. Children are affected by COVID through all these things which I have already mentioned. But apart from that, I have seen a lot of families who have had very good positive responses during the COVID time, because both parents are spending time with the child. A lot of behavioral issues have come down. But again, I've had families where screen time has increased, behavior problems have increased, sleep issues have come in. I've seen both ends of the spectrum during the COVID time. So, I kind of gave this presentation to give you an overview of all the kinds of behavior problems, so that managing children during the pandemic, of course, all these strategies are necessary, but even otherwise post the pandemic, these things are really necessary. So just to give you a simple tip, this is a tip which was published by the International Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Association, where they tell you these few things. The acronym is called REMEMBER. Right? It's called reassure them about the COVID situation, empower them with information, how the virus comes, how will you get affected, what happens if one of the family member is affected, what is quarantine, what do you do if you go into quarantine, in a very simple manner, so that the child does not get panicky and anxious about it. First, maintain your own calm, don't show the child that you're anxious about the whole thing. It's very necessary, like I said, to keep good body language, talk to the child in a nice way. Engage them by telling them stories, giving them examples of all the positive things which are going on in the world right now. Talk to them about their emotions. Beware of all the complex things which the news and TV is constantly bringing in. So kind of stop TV time, stop looking at news so frequently, and just look at what is adequate. Educate them about how frontline workers are helping the world, how they can help in this kind of a situation. Help your neighbors, acknowledge the grocery shop guy or the swachhata guy or whoever it is whom they want to acknowledge, and have good routine during the day. Wake up during the same time, eat at a particular time, have reading time, play time, watering the plants time, go to bed, reading a story time, and have a regular routine which you can kind of follow, because I don't think the schools are going to start at least for another 4 to 6 months, and it's really very necessary for us to have a routine for children so that they kind of go on well and move into the next year, right? So these are the last few slides I have, which basically is like a prescription I have, and a summary of what all I have said. So the first 3 most important things are prescriptions about how you deal with your children, right? So 1, do not compare. Your only limit is your soul, and that's what we have to convey to our children. There is no competition. They have to step up by themselves in their own perspective. Second thing, lots of positive reinforcement and dream big. This is again a picture from the movie Up, right? That's what it teaches us. Dream big. Don't think it is not possible. Don't get demotivated because somebody else told you it's not possible. It is possible. Believe in yourself, believe in your child. And whenever there is belief, that is when things start, showing up. That is when things start becoming positive. Again, positive vibes only. Surround yourself with people, with environment which gives you positive reinforcement even as a parent. Have friends who are believers, have friends who are thinkers. Surround yourself with people who see greatness not only in you, even when you don't see it in yourself, they have to see it in you. Surround yourself with people who can do that for you. Have friends or have family people who can do that for you when you're stressed and when you're down. And I have 3 very important tips for all parents and grandparents who are watching this video today right now. Please argue, please fight. It is necessary. Please sort out your arguments, but not in front of your children. We all are humans. We all make errors. We are not perfect. But the beauty of the argument is if you argue correctly, and you're never wrong. Each of them have their own perspective. How you have grown up is different. How your husband has grown up is different. How your parents have grown up is different. So I'm sure you have a lot of issues between each other, but please sort out these issues. It's very, very necessary to argue, but do not prolong the argument. Finish off, sort it out on the same day, and like I said, come back to the same page. And I really, really request parents here and grandparents here, work together as one unit with the child. This is really more than any time. This is the time during the pandemic when all of us are stuck at home, and more than ever, this is the time when we really have to work together as a single unit to help our children. The second most important tip which I want to give you is work on you, right? The greatest project you'll ever work on is you. I know parenting is difficult. I know you're all busy. All of us have work from home. There are a lot of difficult situations. There are too many things on your plate. But if you have to be mentally healthy, to keep your child mentally healthy with less behavior problems, it's really very necessary for you as parents and grandparents to work on yourself. By this, I mean that you have at least 1 hour in a week, not even in a day, not even on alternate days, at least 1 hour in a week where you will do something to make yourself better. Maybe you'll attend a yoga class, maybe you'll attend an online Zumba class, or maybe you will learn embroidery, right? Maybe you will learn something of your childhood passion which you dropped out long time ago, or maybe you will sit and sing to yourself, or whatever it is. There are a lot of online resources. Do something, but that 1 hour you're doing it to improve your mental health. And that's really very important when you're managing your children, because this pandemic time kind of burns us out a lot, because all of us are at home. We're trying to balance so many things, right? And the last tip for parents is ask for help. There is nothing wrong in asking for help, nothing wrong in talking to experts, nothing wrong in finding out. Many times we learn even from our children. a lot of things even from our children we learn. So it's really important to ask for help. Whoever it is, you can ask for help, ask for support, ask for tips, take guidance, and see a doctor if things go beyond something which you can't handle by yourself or can't handle with your friends and family support. This is just to give you a small glimpse of how I handle myself and I handle my mental health. Apart from being a doctor, I'm also a dancer and I'm trained in music as well. So during my time for myself, I kind of go back into my dancing and music and try to spend time with what I like. I also have a children's club, which used to happen every Sunday once upon a time when the lockdown was not there, where we used to have people invited from any walk of life, to come in and teach children various things. In this picture, you can see that there's a lady who taught children how to make cards, and all these children had wonderful messages which they wanted to write to their parents, and they took these cards home. So I run this children's club which is called as Tite Sante, and Tite Sante, basically it's a Kannada word. Tite Sante means a market full of naughty kids. That's what it means. So this is what I do when I have some free time. And yes, I would like to conclude by saying, and being a parent myself, being a doctor as well, I would like to actually say that there is no such thing as a perfect parent. So just be a real one, be honest, accept your flaws, argue, work on your flaws, help your children, build trust, and then you will kind of have a nice, long, enjoyable parenting with your child, along with being able to enjoy their wonderful childhood, right? So I'm leaving this last slide on because it has my contact details, and I'm now moving on to taking question and answers. I see